everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, as I'm sure you can already probably tell by the title, is my top foundations. So this is a really highly requested video. I constantly get asked about foundations, so what are the best foundations, which ones are the highest coverage, which ones are going to be okay to use on my acne prone skin, and which ones are also really good for oily skin. So I've got my favourite foundations here in front of me, and I'm going to go through each of them, tell you a little bit about them and why I love them, and also recommend what I think is great for you guys to try as well. Now keep in mind, as I have got medium toned skin and with a yellow undertone, all of the shades of these foundations are obviously to suit my skin. So you will need to go in and get colour matched and whatnot to find your perfect shade. So I think what I'll do is I'll start off with my drugstore favourites. I have got 3 drugstore favourite foundations. And this first one you probably will already have guessed. It is the L'Oreal True Match Foundation. So this is basically a beauty cult here on YouTube. It is a very, very popular foundation. It is a medium coverage foundation, but it is easily buildable to a full coverage if you really stipple it on with a nice thick kabuki brush. It is extremely easy to blend. I could even probably blend a colour that didn't match my actual skin tone and it would still look okay because this foundation is so easy to blend. It comes with a little pump and it squirts out of the little pump. It's kind of liquidy, but then as it buffs out, it gets to more of like a powdery finish. So there it is there on the back of my hand. As you can see, it's still quite luminous despite drying to more of a mattifying finish. It isn't marketed as a mattifying foundation, but with my oily skin, I do find that I can get an extended wear time out of it, probably about 6 to 8 hours. And I find that I do not ever need to touch up with a powder. I do always set this foundation in place with a powder before using it, but yeah, I never need to touch up. So it never looks cakey, it's got great buildable coverage. And the other great thing about this is it comes in a stack of different shades. So anywhere from pink undertones to yellow undertones to neutral undertones, and then also for those of you with quite dark skin, they have got a shade for all of you, so really love this one. Next up is another foundation from L'Oreal as well that you've probably seen in a couple of my videos, and this is the L'Oreal Lumi Magique foundation. Now this one I would say is very similar in texture and blendability to the L'Oreal True Match, but this one has got a beautiful luminous glow to it as well. So this one actually contains liquid light technology. So once it's blended into the skin, there's pigments in this foundation that actually reflect light. So in photographs and even in real life, you'll just look like you've got a really gorgeous glow to your skin. Obviously for foundations with a more of a dewy glowy finish, those with oily skin can have a little bit of trouble with getting the wear to stay. And sometimes you'll notice that these types of foundations will break up around the nose area where you're producing the most oil. But I have to say I have not found this with this foundation, and I do get quite oily, especially during hormonal times of the month, if you know what I mean. But it's a fantastic foundation. Like I said, it does have a really nice glowing and dewy finish, so love that one. Both of these L'Oreal foundations retail here in Australia for about $30. And I know that sounds crazy, ridiculously expensive to those of you that live in the States or overseas, but I'm sure you're aware that products are much more expensive here in Australia. But that's just the way it is, so yeah. Moving on to my last drugstore foundation, and I apologise for the messy packaging. I should have cleaned it before I started filming, but I didn't. This is the Covergirl 3-in-1 Stay Fabulous foundation. So the idea with this foundation is that it contains a primer, a foundation and a concealer in it as well. So the idea is that this is the only product that you will need to use when doing your makeup. Personally, I don't get enough coverage really out of this to not use a concealer. I do quite like an under eye highlight, so it wouldn't matter how full coverage the foundation was, I would always put concealer under my eyes anyway. It also contains a sunscreen in it, so it's an SPF 20. So this foundation is not going to be ideal for you if you're going to be involved in flash photography, because as you probably know, sunscreens contain titanium dioxide, which actually really reflects the light in flash photography, and you get that really awful white cast and you just look like a zombie. So I wouldn't recommend this one for a nighttime, but for a daytime foundation for all day wear, really, really fantastic. I get, like with the L'Oreal foundations, I get about 6 to 8 hours of wear to it, and I do not need to touch up. And as I mentioned earlier, I do have oily skin, so I find that this one really, really lasts on my skin, gives me full flawless coverage, and it also does a fantastic job of covering larger pores, like sort of in this area of my face. So yeah, this is a really great shine-free foundation, and this one retails for about the same price as the L'Oreal ones here in Australia. It's got more of a limited shade range. There's not as many shades for those of us with yellow undertones, unfortunately. This one is $8.42 and I actually cannot wear this one. I picked this one up by mistake. I normally wear I think it's like the darkest one in the range that we have here in Australia, but I can't get away with this one because it's actually too pink. But yeah, other than that, it's a really great medium coverage shine-free foundation. So I've got 5 more foundations to talk about, and the rest of these are actually high-end. When you are thinking about investing in a higher end product, normally I would say the thing that you really want to spend a reasonable amount of money on is your foundation. As I've just mentioned, there are many fabulous drugstore foundations, but when you're doing your makeup, the base it's like a canvas. So if you don't have a perfect flawless base, the rest of your makeup is going to look really messy. So you really do want to start with a really beautiful flawless base, and some of these high-end brands do create phenomenal foundations. And I know you might think, oh, I don't really want to spend that much money on a foundation, but the product will last you a significant amount of time, because normally with a higher end foundation you don't actually have to use as much product to build up a coverage. So yeah, I just wanted to pop that in before I talk about these, for those of you that are, you know, questionable about spending so much money on a foundation. And I will talk roughly about the price ranges here in Australia as we go through them as well. So the first foundation I want to talk about is my M.A.C Studio Tech Foundation. So this is actually a cream foundation, and I don't tend to use this one in videos as much. I don't know why, I think I just forget that I've got it there. As you can see, mine is very, very well loved, which should give you an indication of how much I like it. It comes in like a little pan. Underneath here, it's got like a little sponge applicator. I wouldn't recommend you ever using these sponge. As you can see, I haven't used mine, but it is good for traveling. So this is a very full coverage cream foundation, but it can be blended out to be less full coverage as well. Just depends on the way that you apply it. My favorite way to apply this foundation is with a damp beauty blender sponge. I find that the sponge it absorbs the excess oil, and as you pat it onto the skin, all you're really left with is the pigment from the foundation. And it just gives you a really natural finish at the same time as being really full coverage. Being a cream product, I would not recommend this one for those of you that have really acne prone skin, because there's so much oil in a cream product, you're probably going to find that it blocks some of your pores and it might actually aggravate some of your acne. So if you are prone to acne, like I said, probably want to avoid this one. But for those of you that don't get too much acne, and even for those of you that do have quite oily skin, you'll find that this one will work very well for you, and it's really great for a nighttime because it photographs very, very well. So this one retails here in Australia for $56, so it is quite pricey. But I used this for probably a good year before it actually hit pan, because you only really need a little bit of product because it's so highly pigmented. And even though creams normally do settle into fine lines and pores, I find that this one gives me a really nice smooth finish, and I don't get any of the settling that you would normally get with a cream product. So yeah, that is the M.A.C Studio Tech Foundation. So the next foundation that I'm going to talk to you about is the Benefit Hello Flawless Oxygen Wow Foundation. It's got a long name, I know. So this one is actually a brightening foundation. It's oil-free and it contains SPF 25, so it's going to give you a decent amount of protection in the sun. This foundation is light to medium coverage. It's more of a light coverage, but it is buildable to a medium coverage. So like I said earlier, if you use a really dense kabuki brush, you're going to be able to stipple it onto the skin and really build up the coverage. This one's more for natural everyday wear, I find, and it is brightening, so when you apply it, it is going to really brighten up your face and just make you look a lot more awake and a lot more healthy for a really luminous glow. So I like this one for everyday wear, for like going to work, things like that. It's oil free, but it's also very hydrating, so I don't find that I get any areas of dryness or anything like that. And with my oily skin, I do find that it does last me all day long. So I can pop this one on in the morning before work, and then I can work all day and come home and I'll still have a really good coverage when the day is over. The only thing I would say about this foundation is that it doesn't keep me as matte as some of the other ones that I've got here. Ideally, you would probably want to touch this one up during the day with a powder just over the top, probably just down in the T-zone if you do have oily skin like mine, but it really just depends on how your skin reacts with it. But yeah, it gives a really nice natural luminous coverage, and it's kind of like your skin but better. So love this one. So the last 3 foundations I'm going to talk about are pretty much my cult favorites. I use them in nearly every video, and I probably couldn't choose between them because they're all incredible. So the first one is the Nars Sheer Glow Foundation. Oh my goodness, if you have not got this foundation, or if you have not tried this foundation, I highly recommend you go and check it out. The day that I purchased this foundation, my life was changed forever, and I'm not even kidding. It is incredible. So this one's a medium coverage foundation, but it's very easily buildable. I can get full coverage on my skin with it as well. For those of you that have quite large areas of redness or acne and things like that, you might find that you do need concealer over those areas. But I'm fairly lucky with my skin, and I'm usually pretty clear and I don't have too much redness, so this one works perfectly as a full coverage for me. I wish I could tell you how good this foundation looks in person. You guys only ever see me here on the camera, and there's lots of lights and things going on, so it doesn't look as good as it actually looks in real life. It gives your skin the most natural, glowing look that I can even describe. It's incredible. It doesn't settle into fine lines, it doesn't settle into pores, and I don't find that I get any creasing in the smile lines or under the eyes or anything like that. It just stays perfect all day long. I could get probably 10 hours of really good wear out of this foundation. It would stay full coverage and it doesn't break up onto the skin. With my oily skin, I don't have any issues at all. It actually keeps me matte despite the fact that it is a sheer glow foundation. And I don't even know why they called it sheer glow. Like, I get the glow, but I don't get the sheer. This foundation has beautiful, beautiful coverage. It lasts all day. It's not going to aggravate the skin of those of you who do have acne because it just glides on, it doesn't clog pores. It just gives the most natural, flawless, beautiful finish. This is my foundation of choice if I'm going to an event, if I'm going out for dinner, if I need my skin to look beautifully flawless, this is the foundation that I will always go to. In Australia, it's available from the M.A.C Cosmetics counters here, and it retails for $68 here in Australia, which is quite pricey, I know, but I promise you it is worth it. You only need a tiny little bead of product to cover your whole face. You will get full coverage out of it. It lasts ages. It's amazing. I could go on all day about this foundation. Next up, I want to talk about my Estee Lauder Double Wear Foundation. So if you are an oily skin girl and you are finding that nothing is lasting on you, you're not getting a full day of coverage, it's breaking up everywhere, it's just looking horrid after a few hours, you need to invest in some Estee Lauder Double Wear. This is probably actually the highest coverage foundation that I have here. It is very full coverage, but the best thing about this is that it stays all day long. It lasts forever. You could wear it to the gym and sweat your ass off and it would still be there. It is like paint. It's incredible. So this is an oil-free foundation and it does contain SPF 10 in it, but I find that with flash photography that it goes okay and I don't get too much flashback. Being an oil-free product, it's perfect for those of you with oily skin. It actually seems to work to absorb any excess oil. So I don't find that I get any shininess in the T-zone or anything like that. I just stay matte all day long. And like I said, the coverage lasts all day long. It's incredible how good the coverage is. It's crazy, really. And they do have a great range of shades as well. This one's cheaper than my other high-end ones. This one retails for $50. So this is actually the cheapest foundation, and you only need a tiny little bit of this and it goes a long way. So for that $50, you're going to get a lot of wear out of this foundation. So yeah, that's the Estee Lauder Double Wear. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about the Giorgio Armani Luminous Silk Foundation. This one is a little bit of a princess product, I guess you could say. It's very expensive. This one retails for $90 here in Australia. So it's not the cheapest foundation that you're going to come across, but this is my go-to when I am doing an absolutely fancy makeup look. So if I'm going to a wedding or some kind of really fancy event, this is the foundation that I will choose. So this one gives me the coverage of the Estee Lauder, but it also gives me the dewiness and the glowiness of the Nars Sheer Glow. It's kind of like those two mixed together, but as I said, it is a lot more expensive. If you wanted either of those, you might not want this one as well. It just depends. I like to collect makeup, so obviously I have a lot more foundation than a girl could really ever need. But yeah, I love this one. The packaging's really, really beautiful. It's got a little pump applicator at the top there. I would say this is more of a medium coverage. I mean, I can get full coverage out of it depending on the way I apply it. I will either use a nice dense kabuki brush with this one or a beauty blender sponge. But when it is applied with a beauty blender sponge, the coverage is obviously a little bit less than it is with a kabuki. So really with any of these products, it just depends on how you do apply them. but it smells good, it feels good. It keeps me matte at the same time as being really, really dewy and glowing, and I get so many compliments when I wear this foundation. It's incredible. From memory, the shade range of this one isn't as big as some of these other high-end foundations, so they do cater for all undertones and skin tones, but there's just not as many different options. So you would definitely want to go down and get shade match, but I love this foundation. I've loved it for a long time, and I'm going to continue loving it because it's great. So that's the end of my video, guys. Obviously, these are my Holy Grail foundations, and they are foundations that work for my skin personally. So you might find that some of these don't actually work that well for your skin. As I've said before, my skin is oily and I have reasonably large pores on this area of my face here. So I find that all of these foundations give me a really flawless finish. They cover my pores and they keep me matte pretty well all day long. I will pop links in the description bar below to all of these products so that you can check them out and read about them online. And if you do have any questions about any of these foundations or other recommendations for your skin type, definitely pop your questions in the comments below and I will answer all of your questions for you. As I said earlier, foundation is so important to any makeup look, whether it's a simple everyday makeup look or a really dramatic smoky eye or anything like that. If you don't have a flawless base, then the rest of the makeup is going to look quite messy. So yeah, choosing a foundation that works well with your skin and with your skin tone is beyond important. You need to get it right. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe. I hope you're having an amazing day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye! Kind of color has a shimmer that matches it. I don't know if these are going to show up, but a shimmer that matches it perfectly. I love the color pigmentation. I love the range of colors. There's some cool tone browns and some warm tone browns, so you can really do anything with it. It will suit any skin tone. And these shimmers have got to be the most beautiful shimmers ever. I've gotten a couple of complaints from a couple of girls who ended up picking up this palette and they weren't getting full color payoff from the shimmers. If you're one of them, just use a little knife or something to scrape off very carefully the top layer of the shimmer, and you'll find that you'll get full color pigmentation underneath. So yeah, just try that trick and I reckon you'll love this. I should also mention, this is an amazing brush. If there was a category for best brush that came with a palette, it would go to this one.